It is the year of expectations for the Baltimore Ravens. We know the storyline. No team has ever won the AFC North 3 years in a row. It appears likely the Ravens will do it, but not everyone seems to agree. We'll talk about that and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for everybody for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. And of course, thank you to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. Jam-packed episode on this first Purple Friday of the 2025 NFL season. A former NFL fullback had a pretty wild take about the Ravens, and I guess their stake to the AFC North and maybe even their chances at a Super Bowl. We'll dive into that and whether the Ravens are shoo-ins to win the division or not. We'll also talk about the injury news continuing to flow in, as well as Todd Monken talking about a pretty obvious game plan for the Ravens that makes a lot of sense. And here to do that with me today, it is from Sip to Tally, Coach Evans. Coach, I've been wanting to get you on here for a while. As I mentioned before the show, your channel has made me more knowledgeable about the game of football. And if you don't know about Coach, well, you're going to learn about him today because he knows a lot about the game and a lot about this Baltimore Ravens team. It's a pleasure to have you on. How are you feeling about this season? I know a lot of expectations, a lot of storylines, and I'm just so glad we have football back.
I'm super excited about it. I can't wait to actually get to the game Sunday because there's a lot of stuff we need to get off our back from what happened in what was January. So, and even though I don't really buy into the revenge game thing because it's a regular season game, but it is an opportunity to kind of start to erase some of those demons and take that first step toward what the eventual goal is. So I'm just ready for it. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see a year 3 of Lamar with the same offensive coordinator. Excited to see a year 2 with Derrick Henry based off what he did last year. And excited to see what Zach Orr does in his sophomore season. Because if we remember, that's when Mike McDonald took completely off his second season.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. And I'm with you. If there was any revenge to be had, it happened in the postseason. You know, regular season to me is regular season. Still very important. You know, both teams want to start 1-0. But, you know, I want to save all that talk for January. And Lamar Jackson, the Ravens, they clearly are of the mindset, which is the correct one, in my opinion. It is a whole new season. You don't have to worry about what happened last year. Last year is this year, is last year, and this year is this year. But there are a lot of conversations, Coach, just about the Ravens and their expectations for this season. As I mentioned at the top, we know that no team in the AFC North has won the division 3 years in a row. The Ravens will be going for that crown this season. Their path is pretty clear to me. Of course, you got to line up, play the games. Nothing's guaranteed until you actually go out there and earn it. But on paper, at least, this roster is one of the best rosters, if not the best roster in football right now. All the other teams in the North have bigger questions. The Ravens still have their fair share, but all the other teams have bigger questions than the Ravens do. But a former NFL fullback was all in on the Bengals for this situation, and in the whether it was the North or just the Bengals being a little better than the Ravens, even in the postseason. Daryl Moose Johnston, who obviously was a legendary fullback for the Cowboys. He has 3 Super Bowl rings. He said on the Hey K Adams show, he said, quote, "I'm not sold on Baltimore getting there. They have to prove to me that they can do that. Buffalo's scary. Buffalo's a year ahead of last year. Nobody expected them to be in the championship game last year. I think Buffalo's one team you have to worry about in the AFC." And then K Adams was like, hold on a second. Did I just hear Daryl Moose Johnston say that you have more faith in the Bengals in 2025, who have missed the playoffs in the past 2 years, than the Ravens? And he doubled down. He said, yes, because they were there a couple of years ago. They made one of those magical runs. Baltimore's been the favorite for a number of years, one of the top teams in the AFC. They can't get over that last hurdle. Buffalo can't get over that last hurdle. Or the Bengals, the team that becomes the hurdle this year instead of the Chiefs. It all hinges on Al Golden's defense for Cincinnati. Coach, I'll tell you something. People talk about that Bengals Super Bowl appearance like they won the Super Bowl 5 times over. I don't get it. I mean, it feels like the Bengals offense, we know it's going to be great, right? Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, but I'm just not a Bengals believer this season. And again, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but I just don't know based off of the recent events. And that Super Bowl appearance was not recent, in my opinion.
Right.
I don't get how we're still talking about this. While the Ravens and Bengals had 2 great matchups last season, I just feel like the Bengals question marks on defense are so huge.
Before I go into the negative, the positive for them, the Bengals, are that they did get trade back for 1 year, and they finally got their rookie defensive end in. So that's the positive.
Yes.
I don't see where they can stop us in any other situation. Maybe they get a sack here and there or get Lamar off his spot, but the middle of that defense is gone. Like, to me, their biggest weapon is now, if I'm not mistaken, in Detroit, it's Reader. Yep. Reader was an issue when we played them in the past. Their linebackers don't, they run around. They don't really scare me. And their secondary really don't scare me. So if they don't get like constant pressure from Hendrickson and whoever starts, I don't know if the rookie going to start or not, I think they're doomed. Now, are they going to score? Probably. But I don't think they're going to score enough to stop. They can't stop us. And we can score, I want to say, easier than them, because we can hand the ball off and score. I don't think they can hand the ball off and score. They got to throw it around to get the points they need. So I just don't see where they can beat us, because it's gonna be a shootout. It's gonna be 20-something to 30-something, if not more. But I just don't see where they consistently beat us. And if they have one injury to either one of those ends, it's just a wrap for them to stop anybody. Now, I do think they're going to be second in our division. I do. Because their offense is going to carry them over a lot of teams. And they're just going to make people like, look, we scoring 35. Can you score 35? And I don't think they're going to stop us at all. But I still do think they'll be second in the division.
Yeah, a lot of teams can't. The Bengals have one of the highest powered offenses in the league. And again, the thing with the Bengals and the Ravens is we know, Coach, that second Bengals game sparked that closed door meeting with the defense, and they made those changes. And last year's defense that Cincinnati faced, at least, was very different than the one in the second half of the season. And I think it's going to be very different than the one they face this season as well. And you mentioned it with DJ Reader. It's a great point. He's not walking through that door. Jesse Bates is not walking through that door. Right. There are a lot of players from that defense that are no longer there, that they have lost or are not the same players anymore. And you're right. If Trey Hendrickson goes down, I mean, it's scary hours, and not in a good way for that Bengals defense. But you mentioned you think the Bengals will be second. Steelers, to you, I assume, are going to be third, unless Joe Flacco goes on another miracle run as the Browns starting quarterback this season. They're a team that always seems to give the Ravens trouble in certain spots. They're not as flashy as Cincinnati on offense, but it feels like a way that you beat the Ravens is if you just kind of slop the game up a little bit and slow the offense down. And that's how they won the first game in Pittsburgh. They forced that opening drive fumble on Derrick Henry. Justin Tucker obviously missed a couple kicks in that game. But is Pittsburgh just not a threat to you anymore? Do you think it's all going to hinge on, I think, Aaron Rodgers, because the defense still has playmakers on it. So I guess really it's, how do you feel about Aaron Rodgers compared to what they had last year in Russell Wilson and Justin Fields?
Aaron, I feel like Aaron will have them playing on time and on schedule, but my disbelief comes more in their offensive line and DK Metcalf. That I think Aaron will do what Aaron does, and he'll make some tight window throws and put them in right situations based off what the defense come out in. But I just don't have a lot of faith in DK and their offensive line, because Owe, who's had he got his 10 sacks. But if I'm not mistaken, 4 of those sacks came off of one individual, and that's Jones for Pittsburgh. So I don't have faith in their offensive line. Now, I do like Fatnu, who didn't play last year, but I think Aaron Rodgers will have them a better on time, not just moonball team like they had with Pickens. But I just don't trust DK, and I don't trust their offensive line to do enough to beat us.
I think in the division, the Ravens, they have, as I mentioned, the least amount of question marks. What do you think is their biggest question mark, though, for the Ravens? What's their biggest one this year?
I'm probably going to be in the same boat with everybody. It's the guard positions.
Okay.
And not so much to clown the 2 guards, but it's just what we don't know for Voorhees, because he only played, 3 or 4 games before he got hurt. Then he was hurt the entire year before that. And then he was hurt coming out of USC the year before that. So we just don't know if we can get 16, 17, 18 games out of Voorhees. Falele, on the other hand, has, in my opinion, has improved. But to me, his floor was so low that improvement still is still mediocre. But Falele does have the potential to be good. If, like I told somebody the other day, if the light bulb comes on and he figures out hand placement, he's gonna be heck to deal with, because his frame like he don't even have to block some people sometimes because he's so big. You got to actually alter your path to go around him. Or if he like hit the Falalei's best block I ever saw was somebody tripped him and he was able to get a flat back on a defensive end, come up the field, and he crushed the dude. So if he can ever do that on purpose, he'd be massive because that mass at guard is hard to defend, it's hard to beat. And if he could just play with his hands better, because his feet have gotten better, but his hand placement needs to be a lot better so people can't cross his face. And like when he down block, if he get his head in the right spot, get his hands in the right spot, and people can't cross over and get in the hole, and we can open those holes wider for Derek or whoever's running, it would be massive for us. But we just got to understand that our guards are probably the weakest and call plays that accentuates them and not make them do stuff that's kind of that they can't do. Like you asking Falele to get on a second level linebacker on outside zone away from him, that's going to be tough.
I always say, and I'm sure you're in the same boat here, the losses for Falele are just so loud. Like in that week 1 game against the Colts, it's like, and I saw you charted him. What was your chart? Do you remember your chart on Falele in terms of how many wins versus how many losses he had? Because I remember he had good plays in that game.
He did have good plays. I don't remember the exact number, but he had, like you said, he didn't lose as much as we think, but the ones he lost were egregious.
Yeah.
So, and to the point where like the quarterback don't have time to react to you losing, because as soon as you lose, as soon as he lose, they was right on the quarterback. So that kind of puts your quarterback in a situation to jerk or be hurt or just getting hit without expecting it. You want to lose slow, basically.
Yeah.
You got to lose slow. Even if it's Myles Garrett or if it's TJ or whoever it is, just lose slow and get a quarterback an opportunity to make a play off of you, because you got the best guy in the business that can do that. And if you got a hole, just don't let him get past you.
Yeah, the big thing about having Lamar is that he can make something out of nothing. And luckily for Falele, if he does lose fast, Lamar can see that and say, all right, I'm gonna go over here. But it doesn't always. Sometimes it's too bad, and you can't. Lamar, even though he's superhuman, he sometimes cannot even overcome a fast loss if it's too quick. But coming up with the second part of the show, the injury news continues to flow in for the Ravens. It feels like there's a pretty good indication of who will play and who will not in the game on Sunday night against the Bills. We'll talk about what that means, particularly for the Ravens offense, and a lot more coming up on Locked On Ravens. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right means cashing in. With football-backed PrizePicks, the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. And I've been playing PrizePicks lately, and it's such a fun way to stay locked in for the season. It's quick, it's easy, and honestly, it's my favorite way to follow along with football. I love checking the projections, like for this Sunday night. Josh Allen, is he going for more or less in his passing yard totals? You got Derrick Henry, is he going for more or less than 1 rushing touchdown? And for this week's max discounts, they include Lamar Jackson for 0.5 passing yards. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. This show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. They follow what moves them every time they drive. And that's what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond safety, style, and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every detail. As an athlete focuses on every detail, Mazda does the same. From metallic accents to hand-stitched Napa leather, you can feel it in the moment you get behind the wheel. The smooth handling, intuitive controls, and standard all-wheel drive in every crossover SUV. Whether it's a quick drive to practice or a weekend road trip, Mazda makes even everyday drives feel special. Mazda offers more than safety. It's won more 2025 IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. It's the small details that make the big plays, and it's just like there's more to every player, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Back on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Ostreicher and Coach Evans still diving into Ravens talk, Ravens content for you on Locked On Ravens. We're a 5-day-a-week daily Ravens show here, Monday through Friday. So be sure to check us out, like, subscribe, the whole 9 yards, video form and audio form. Coach, seems like we have a pretty good idea of who's going to play and who's not going to play in this game on Sunday. Jair Alexander was back in practice for the second straight day. I think for me, that's a pretty good indication of his availability for Sunday. Daniel Falele actually was, I guess, a surprise on the injury report for Baltimore, but he practiced in full after being limited with an illness, so he should be good to go. Isaiah Likely and Patrick Ricard are the two guys that did not practice. Before we get to them, Jair Alexander, full participant in practice. Do you expect him to have any limitations at all? This is a guy that hasn't practiced before this in nearly a month, and we're hoping that ramp-up period can go quickly, but you don't want to rush the guy also.
True. Now, if we remember when we first got into ones in training camp, Zaire was not with the ones. He was with the twos. Awuzie was with the ones. And I feel like that's going to take place Sunday night, and Jair will get worked in Awuzie's spot. And I feel like those two guys will kind of be cornerback two together. Both of them are older guys. Both of them had some injury history. I think those two guys will kind of play that position and try to keep each other healthy down the stretch. And then when we get to down the stretch, whoever has played the best out of those two will get the majority of those snaps once we get in my opinion, to December, January, and most definitely February football this year. So I think those two have to keep each other healthy, so to speak. But I think when Jair gets in the game, his energy will be infectious to the entire defense. His swagger, his playmaking ability, the ability to take the ball away, putting him into what we already have is like the icing on the cake. Because all we need is guys just to believe, and he'll bring that effort, well, not the effort, that energy to make them believe in themselves and play harder and do different things. So I love having him on the team. I love the fact that he's a down-to-earth, talkative, whatever I say, I'm pretty much gonna back it up unless I'm hurt. And because if we still remember, Justin Jefferson was on pace for 2,000 yards a couple years ago. He don't get those 2,000 yards because of the two games against Jair Alexander.
Yep.
He go off on everybody but the Packers those two games.
It's incredible. I mean, he, to me, when healthy, is still a top 10 cornerback in the league. The problem has obviously been the injuries. And that's honestly, Coach, what I love about some of these veteran signings the Ravens have made is they're very calculated. And look, when you have an opportunity to sign a top 10 corner to a $4 million contract, you're going to do it. But for example, like DeAndre Hopkins and Jair and even in Awuzie, these are guys that, and DeAndre himself hasn't been very healthy over the last handful of seasons. He's dealt with his injury situation, but they're not asking these guys to come in and be the savior of their position groups, right? They're able, like you said, with Awuzie and Alexander, like they're able to keep each other healthy. Or if one of them does have to miss time, well, you have Marlon Humphrey and Nate Wiggins alongside the other guy. If DeAndre has to miss some time, you have Zay and Bateman that can go out there. It's not like if you lose Jair, you lose DeAndre. Yeah, it'd be tough. It'd hurt the team. But it's not like that position group all of a sudden you're scrambling for the majority of the year. And that is why I think this roster is like, it's not a once in a lifetime roster, but I think to me personally, and I'll ask you the same question. To me, it's the best roster they've had in the Lamar Jackson era. And I know it's up there, even maybe if you want to even go back to historically for the Ravens, it's certainly up there. I mean, it's so important to have not only the star powers they have, but the depth, and then the depth behind the depth. I mean, you have 3 undrafted guys making this roster. Like it's insane how much they have on that group in this group.
I agree. And you think about it, with Lamar on the team, this is by far the best running back group. This is by far the best receiving group. Now, I do think the 2019 offensive line was better. I do think that. But then on the defensive side, the D-line, the depth of the interior defensive lineman, linebacker may be a little iffy, but Rowe's a top 2 to 3 linebacker, and depends on who you put beside him, he can kind of pick up that slack. And then your safety, not your safety, your DBs as a whole, not only do you have star power, you have depth. You have, if somebody got to miss a game or two, are we worried? Yes, but you got guys that can play back there, and you got guys that can play multiple positions. You got corners that can play a little bit of safety. You got safety that can play a little bit of corner. You got safety that can come in and play some linebacker. And just what if Darius comes back in December?
Yeah,
you add that to the pile. So I love our depth. I had us as the best roster in the league, and mainly because over Philadelphia and Detroit, because of the depth. When I did my power rankings initially, I had Philadelphia 1, Detroit 2. But when Jair signed, that added a little bit more to it, and that bumped us up to number one, in my opinion, and had those other guys to bump down. I love our depth. Hadn't seen anything like this in a long time, and hopefully the health meter will stay in our favor this year.
That's what it comes down to. It is the health. And yeah, once Jair signed, I bumped them over Philadelphia just slightly in terms of the best roster. He just adds so much to the team. So hopefully he'll be out there. Seems like we're trending that way with the full practice on Thursday. But of course, trending in the wrong direction, it is Isaiah Likely and Patrick Ricard, two guys who are very important for different reasons to this offense. And I know it's kind of sparked Coach a lot of questions just about how is this offense going to look? Are they going to call up Lucas Scott, who was essentially their de facto backup fullback on the roster? Are they going to call up an extra tight end, or are they just going to roll with what they have and kind of adjust in that way? In your opinion, assuming that these two are not able to go, and again, we're on track for that to be the case, how do you kind of look at this offense? Is this a concern for you? Do you think that they're going to be all right and they can still work with what they have?
I'm a little bit of both. And the reason I say that because Pat Ricard plays so much tight end. He wasn't just the fullback. He plays so much tight end as that second blocking tight end. So it concerns me a little bit that both of those guys are not playing. But I do think we can roll with what we got with Kolar, because out of the three just tight ends, if you exclude Ricard, I think Kolar is the best blocking tight end. I think Mark's going to be a man possessed coming out of all the stuff that happened in the offseason and whatever. I think he's going to be possessed and play out of his mind. Somebody has to be that third tight end, because Buffalo's interior guys are kind of hurt. And so it would behoove me for us not to run the ball on them like we, need to. Like, even if for some odd reason we get behind, still run the ball and make those guys defend the run and come up, and then you get one-on-one opportunities with your receivers outside. So I think it's going to hurt not having Ricard in there more so than Likely, because I think we can get Likely's production out of Mark. The blocking aspect that Ricard brings, I don't think we have anybody on the roster to fulfill that, not even the call-up. I think Ricard's injury hurts more than Likely's for this game specifically.
Would you expect to see more heavy wide receiver sets? I mean, do you think that they're going to try to be more balanced in a way of throwing, and they're balanced under Monken anyway, but assuming like, do they kind of tilt to the other side of that scale a little bit more and maybe not utilize the running game as much? I mean, we know that the running game is still the bread and butter of this group, so you don't want to take it away completely, but like, would you expect DeAndre Hopkins or maybe even like a Tylan Wallace or a Tez Walker to play more of a factor, or do you think that they will just try to get by with what they have?
I think you'll see a boatload of 11 personnel, and then in situations where we have to or we need like a big run, you'll get some 12 with Kolar in there. But for the most part, I think it's going to be more of a wide receiver heavy thing. I think you can bring Tylan Wallace in there and kind of do some of that stuff the Rams used to do with Cooper Kupp, where they would fold him under and kind of lead block. So I think Todd Monken has enough in his bag to get us through this game with the roster that we have. I didn't think about Tylan Wallace until you just said that, but I can see him doing some of that digging some linebackers out or some safeties out, folding up under a tackle or cracking on some outside zone stuff. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but now that you mention it, Tylan will probably play a factor in this game, especially blocking. Even if we don't throw him a ball, especially blocking.
Yeah, he goes out there and every opportunity he gets, he takes advantage. It feels like, doesn't play a big role on Sundays for the most part, but he'll go out there and he'll do his job pretty effectively, which of course you love to see out of a guy like Tylan, he's like the grit, the definition of grit on this roster. He is one of those guys that you can point to in that regard. So I love it. But of course, the Ravens and the Bills, it's a huge matchup for both teams. Coming up, we'll talk about Todd Monken revealing a pretty obvious game plan of what the Ravens need to do to win, plus thoughts on the game in general. So stay tuned. We got a lot coming your way on the show. This episode is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered. Powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Ravens, Keon Martin, he delivered in a big way over the course of the preseason for him, making splash plays with a pick six in the preseason, good run stuffs, had special teams moments as well. And look, when the pressure was on, Keon Martin came through. No hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, this performance wasn't a fluke. Keon Martin, he was on a streak in the preseason. Of course, he earned his spot on the Ravens' final 53-man roster. And just like Keon Martin living for the Ravens, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season. You can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. Moving along on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Ostrecker and Coach Evans still diving into all the Ravens talk. It's just we're counting down. I don't know about you, Coach. I'm counting down the hours, minutes, seconds until we can get to Sunday night. And, you know, I love preseason football. I love training camp and kind of the build up to it. But you get to a certain point and you're just like, come on, can we get to week one? Can we get there? And then it's all ships go from there. So Todd Monken talked to the media yesterday, and he dove into a lot of things. You know, he talked about things the Ravens need to do to win. He talked about Mark Andrews, a lot. And something that was asked was about the first game setting the tone for the rest of the season. And so he was asked, what does he want to see from the offense? And he emphasized clean football. It's what they worked on all offseason. He said it's what the operation starts with. And he went into detail about the cadence, the pre-snap penalties, and staying ahead of the chains, protecting the football, finishing downfield, being the most physical team on the field, like all of that stuff. One thing that out of that whole answer, Coach, that I want to see the Ravens be a lot better at this season is the penalties. The penalties were a problem for the Ravens last season. We know that they're the second highest penalized team in the league last season. Felt like they would get positive momentum on a drive, and penalties are just, they're drive killers. You know, Derrick Henry runs for 8 yards on 1st and 10 to get it to 2nd and 2. Nope. Holding, you're back to 1st and 20. And it just puts you out of field goal range sometimes. It ruins momentum. Penalties are the big thing. And that was a problem for the Ravens. It felt like for a lot of training camp. Now, of course, they're working on different things and the cadences and whatnot. So that's where I'm like, if we see it to start the first couple of weeks, then I'm going to get a lot more concerned about it. But man, Josh Allen talked about it to the media for the Bills on Tuesday, where you can't, or I think it was Wednesday, you can't give, in his case, Lamar opportunities. For the Ravens, they cannot give Josh opportunities. In my opinion, I think one of the best things the Ravens can do is an offense. I don't want to go back to like the Greg Roman 15-minute drive type thing, but keeping Josh Allen on the sideline and dominating on offense that way, if Josh doesn't have the ball, he can't do anything with it.
I agree. I always feel like time possession is the biggest benefactor other than turnover margin in a game. If you can keep the ball and, you know, grind 6, 7, 8 yards a pop, or even 4, and just waste that time and use that time and finish the drive. Wasting that time and not finishing the drive is you wasting time, like legit. But you got to finish the drive mainly with 7 or definitely with 3. But you got to do something with that time managed, and you can't turn it over as well. But as far as with keeping them off the field, I feel like we have the roster, we have the game plan, we have the potential to do that. And not only do those penalties hurt drives, they extend drives for the other team. Because a lot of the times we'd have guys in 3rd and long, and you get a Brandon Stevens PI, or you get another PI, or you just get a PI for 45 yards. So not only is the offensive penalties hurt our offense, our defensive penalties extend drives for other teams and keep their offense going and give them momentum to do different things. Because, you know, I just think back to the Tre'Davious White pass interference in the playoff game.
Yep.
To me, that was a BS call, but it got them a little going, and they ended up scoring. That kind of fed into what they wanted to do. And we got to figure out some kind of way to negate them. I mean, you can't really punish grown folks like you maybe can do in high school and college, but I guess you can find, I don't know if you can find them. I don't know, but some kind of way we have to stop the pre-snap penalties. The effort penalties, sometimes you got to deal with, but the pre-snap stuff like false starts and illegal man downfield and the penalties last year in the Chiefs games where they were trying to send a message. I forget what it was, but you got to find a way to stop all that, because you have one of the best opportunities ever to win the Super Bowl, and you can't let penalties beat you. And in my opinion, penalties were the biggest deterror from us over any team. No team, in my opinion, really beat us other than probably the Eagles, but penalties beat us every time we lost a game.
We know, Coach, that this team, they're a team that has the guys on big contracts. They have the vets, but we see two guys come in, Malachi Starks and Mike Green, who are NFL ready. And this is the thing that I talk about with a little bit of how projections work for these guys. I think that both Malachi and Mike right now have extremely high floors. And I think when you talk about high floor players, a lot of people assume, oh, they have a high floor, but their ceiling is probably low because they're ready and they've hit that. No, Malachi and Mike have very high floors and very high ceilings. That to me is, I think those who can contribute. Malachi is going to have a big role day one. I think Mike Green's going to work his way into one. My draft crush was Aeneas Peebles, and I was screaming every day on the third day, get this man in a purple and black. And finally, they answered my call. How pumped are you for this rookie class? You even have a guy like Tyler Loop, who's expected to have a big role this season, of course.
This rookie class is going to be extremely effective, and not necessarily this year. The top end guys will be this year, including add Loop to that. But just look at down the line, like with Fub, that's Aeneas. Pass rush situations. You get a third and long, and you slide him in a defensive tackle. His quickness, his hand fighting, all that stuff is going to give guards fits. Now the elite guards may handle it, but the regular and sub-tier guards, he's going to destroy them with his effort and his energy from a defensive tackle position. Now, Mike Green, I don't think Mike could even scratch the surface. Like, I don't know how he came in with that pass rush bag like that. And I know Chuck is adding to it, but when he figure out the ins and outs of how to beat different NFL tackles, that dude, he could be one of the all-time greats. To come in, I have never seen a rookie come in with a bag that deep with pass rush moves. And he come from Marshall. And I know he went to a bigger school before that, but he came from Marshall. And then you say, well, not you, but just people in general. Yeah. The competition. Put on an Ohio State game. He was the only person on Marshall team that looked like they belonged out there. He was well, yeah, he did. He did dominate some of them tackles. The sack on the spin. Yeah. You don't see NFL players work that move as crisp and as smooth as he did. And so for him to come in with a bag like that and us to get him in the second round, based off of what had happened to him in the past, that's the cost of steal right there. Like, and I couldn't believe we went for it, but when we got him, I'm like, salute to you, DeCosta. That was a great pickup because to keep his nose clean, he's going to be one of the ones. And I think he's in a environment that will help him to keep his nose clean. There'll be football. And you hear countless numbers of other players like how they work in Baltimore. Even what was the old running back we had? Mike Davis. Mike Davis talked about how hard they work and the culture in Baltimore. So he's in a situation where they will keep him, they'll put him in an environment to keep himself straight, and then he'll just flourish. He can be, when it's all said and done, he could be on that list of guys that we talk about in Ravens folklore.
I'm so excited for it. And again, like everybody in the AFC North has their guy. It's Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati, TJ Watt in Pittsburgh, and Myles Garrett in Cleveland. There was not a single player at that position group in that draft outside of Abdul Carter that would have changed my mind the way that Mike Green did with that pass rush group. I mean, look, Kyle Van Noy, really solid player. Adafeowe, really solid player. Tavius Robinson, really solid player. But Mike Green just gives you that like pure potential. I mean, we have former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail on, and he compares him to Elvis Dumerville and just like some of the things that he can do. I mean, it's going to be unreal. The Ravens, they have a big week 1 matchup against the Bills. I'm not sure how much Mike will contribute in that one. He'll certainly have some plays, but they have a lot of guys ahead of him that they want to get involved as well. But Coach, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for hopping on. I want, before I get you out of here, to get your prediction for the game on Sunday night. And, of course, tell people where they can find you and what you're working on.
Prediction for the game, I'm thinking Ravens 31, Bills 27. And I don't think it's like a last-minute win. I think they maybe score late to kind of get a little closer. But and as far as the season, I think of the season in forms of quadrants, with the exception of the last, because we got 5. And if normally 3 and 1 in each quadrant will get you 13, 14 wins. So I'm sticking there too, because we always have a game where we just don't play up to we play down to competition. And so I see 1 or 2 in there, but I think I told my chat this last night. If we come through them first 6 games undefeated, something could be there. Something could be there. We go through them first 6 games undefeated. Something could be there because that first 6 games is unheard of.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's unbelievable. It could happen. I mean, look, you got a tough schedule to start, and we will find out how the rest unfolds. But all right, Coach, I appreciate you. Where can people find you?
Oh, Sip the Tally on YouTube, Coach Evans 9 on Twitter, and all the other social media platforms at Sip the Tally as well.
I love it. All the links in the description down below. Be sure to check them out. Go support them. You will not regret it. You will be a smarter football fan or football consumer because of it. So be sure you go and support them. But Coach, I appreciate you again. Thank you for hopping on, and thank you to everybody who watched and listened today on Locked On Ravens. Maybe a bonus episode tomorrow. Who knows what the headlines from it? But of course, we'll be back on Sunday at the very least doing our watch along for week 1, as well as instant reactions and the whole 9 yards there. So on the way out, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form, follow along in audio form, and I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.